Everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather on the 20th day of June 2021. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. First, we've got fire danger graphic, and really hard to find areas of even high fire danger, no extreme anymore with the all the precip that's come into the interior areas. Especially the Yukon Flats there that had the bigger area of extreme fire danger yesterday. On yesterday's graphic, much better today, just over toward the eastern border, a couple areas of high fire danger east of the flats there. And that due to Coldfoot, for example, picking up 0.6 of an inch of precipitation. Bettles also picked up 0.6 of an inch. And Beaver had a little over an inch, 1.07 inches. That was a 24-hour amount. So a good soaking rain in some areas up there, and again, it's really reduced the fire danger. Same thing over other areas of the interior. Up to 3/4 of an inch of rain fell in the eastern Brooks Range. Let's see, in Caltag, you get farther to the southwest, had about 0.3 of an inch of precipitation, but a reporting station just northeast of Caltag, had 0.8 of an inch of rain. So some pretty good rainfall around the area. Beaver, as I mentioned, Beaver with 1.07 inches, and anywhere from 1/10 to 1/3 of an inch fell in the Copper River Basin again, that in the last 12 hours. And Kodiak, big rainfall amount too, with the system there in the Gulf of Alaska, picked up about 1.7 inches of precipitation. So moving on to the next graphic here showing no hazardous weather, or the hazardous weather graphic. There are no watches, no warnings, no advisories anywhere around the state for the next couple of days. And from there, let's take a look at Gamble and St. Lawrence Island. Widespread clearing over the northern Bering Sea up toward the Bering Strait, including St. Lawrence Island here. On the horizon there to the northeast, you can see some what appears to be clouds. Well, it is clouds up toward the strait there. There's some a lower cloud deck there. On up across, say, Tin City, but very just maximum sunshine today across St. Lawrence Island. Temperatures in the mid-40s or so, mid to upper 40s. Wind's not too bad, 10 miles an hour or less. But next frame here showing, let's see, this is Teller, and they pick up some cirrus at Teller. Otherwise, still good VFR, clear skies, a lot of sunshine. Kind of an interesting shot there, looking west from Teller. And again, very nice conditions. That's all due to offshore northeast winds that were pretty gusty from the western Brooks Range and across the Noatak Valley of the northwest coast today. And on the satellite imagery, we can see a system pushing up to the North Gulf Coast, low pressure east of Kodiak Island. That spun the heavier rain into Kodiak last night and earlier this morning. Again, picking up about 1.7 inches. That was a 24-hour amount, and that's pushing up toward the North Gulf Coast, or actually more toward the eastern North Gulf Coast. Yakutat's had a 1/2 inch of rainfall in the last 12 hours. Contrast that with just, Cordova, about 0.2 of an inch, and rain on the increase in the Panhandle as well, but just light amounts so far. Juneau carrying some light rain currently with only 1/100 of an inch, though, but that'll go up tonight. Gustavus had about 1/10 of an inch, and the heavier rain will be moving in there this evening, and the whole front though will be dissipating as it does, so you'll get a good shot of rain mainly this evening. It'll tend to become lighter after midnight and in toward morning. Otherwise, heavier clouds there along the Yukon River Valley. Shows you thunderstorms developing over in that area there. With again, get near the thunderstorms, you could pick up anywhere from 3 to 5/10 of an inch of precipitation. But otherwise, showers are lighter and enough clearing to allow temperatures back in the lower to mid-70s in and around the Fairbanks area. And also, where the heavier rains had occurred, Beaver had the heavy rainfall amount. They had 74 degrees this afternoon with some sun breaks as that area moisture pushed north and northwestward. And then that washing out front over the Bering Sea, you can see the low pressure area tracking just south of Shemya. And the front really starting to break up now as it pushes in to the Unalaska or the Unimak Island area. Clouds coming in at Unalaska Island, only about 1 to 2 tenths of an inch falling with that precipitation. And that'll continue to lighten up as that front dissipates and doesn't make too much farther eastward progress there. Kind of just wash out over the Fox Islands, but it was enough to kick the winds up to 40 miles an hour for a peak wind gust at Nikolsky. And up over the northwest interior, winds are pretty gusty as well. Howard Pass, Western Brooks Range had a gust from the north, 52 miles per hour this afternoon. No attack had northeast winds gusting to 40 miles an hour. And Kelly, 31 miles an hour. Point Hope about the same. And that keeping the air dry there. You got some higher clouds or mid clouds there with the convection shifting westward from the interior, but the low clouds fog really restricted, although there was a band, doesn't show too well in this imagery, from just north of St. Lawrence Island into the Bering Strait itself, lower clouds and fog. Some of that catching Shishmaref as well. And let's see, rolling that one more time, you can see the front lifting northward, at least the first shot of moisture lifting northward across the North Gulf Coast. The main front still just south of the area there. Winds kicking up to about minimum gales along the North Gulf Coast this afternoon, anywhere gusts up to 40 miles an hour, 45 miles an hour at the most, otherwise small craft advisories. And that gale warning won't last, whole system weakening as I mentioned, so I'm mostly looking at small craft advisory level winds, and those will be diminishing as well. And let's see, coming up on today's graphic, low pressure over the west central interior, and then more of a thermal trough extending eastward over the mid and upper Tanana Valley into the Yukon there, with temperatures 75, 76 at Eagle, give or take there, and just southwest warm spot, and I can't remember the location now, they were 77 degrees, but notice the widespread clearing skies over the northern Bering Sea. Some pretty good breaks into Bristol Bay and south of the Alaska Peninsula and across Akun Island there, and it looks like a few breaks in and around the Pribilofs. And then the fog through the Bering Strait areas of the Arctic coast, tighter gradient supporting those winds there along the western Arctic coast into the Western Brooks Range. And then the rainfall amounts moderate to heavy, Kodiak Island and eastern Gulf Coast to the northern Panhandle. And let's see, Engun carried moderate rain here this afternoon for at least a short time. Otherwise, lee side of the Alaska Range and the sunshine, temperatures back into the 70s. And then that washing out front there over the eastern Aleutians will really continue to wash out tonight. Still drew it in as a front. But let's see, you can see for tomorrow, just a trough now with some lingering showers and clouds there for the Fox Islands, but some clearing. Alaska Peninsula could see some clearing for the Pribilofs as well. Otherwise, the Aleutians, a little breezy, nothing too strong on the winds there for the western Aleutians, with low clouds, fog, rain, and drizzle, kind of a typical summer condition there, with showers for Adak, maybe dry for Atka with a sunbreak or two. Thunderstorms redevelop in the central interior, mostly south of the Yukon River. Could be near the Yukon River there or near the Nulato Hills there, and maybe just to the east in the afternoon tomorrow. That's the best chance of seeing any convection or thunderstorms. Showers, south central Alaska, mostly cloudy skies, another cool day, and gradually improving there along the North Gulf Coast areas, with the southeast coast looking like periods of rain and fog, with maybe some clearing along the coast of Prince of Wales Island. That would be on Monday. And the outlook for Tuesday, lingering showers over the northern Panhandle, otherwise partly to mostly cloudy, meaning some sunshine possible, especially toward Dixon Entrance, southern inside waters. North Gulf Coast looking really good, high pressure right along the coastline, partly sunny Yakutat, maybe to Cordova. Showers not as widespread, and maybe a little bit more clearing over south central Alaska, but definitely a good chance of showers in the afternoon over the mountainous terrain of the Alaska Range, Kenai Peninsula, Talkeetnas, of course Alaska Range, chance of thunderstorms there, central interior. But northern half of the state, variably cloudy to mostly clear, all the way out to the Arctic coast, see a fair amount of sunshine. And a couple of weak troughs keep it damp and unsettled for the Alaska Peninsula to maybe Kodiak Island and along the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta to Togiak. And taking a look at lows tonight, 40s to mid-50s, warmest in the eastern and northeast interior areas, near 50 in the Panhandle, mid to upper 40s there for Bristol Bay, the Alaska Peninsula, lower 40s Bering Sea, mid to upper 30s St. Lawrence Island, North Slope, right around the frost points for the Arctic coast and North Slope. Highs tomorrow 75 to 80 Yukon Flats, otherwise in the 70s. You head down the river valleys there to 70 Nikolai McGrath, 60s lower to mids, the Sitna Valley, Kenai Peninsula, 50s, mid 50s for Kodiak Island, and highs upper 50s to lower 60s for the Panhandle. And then Tuesday morning lows, 40s and 50s, sum it up, except 30s for the Arctic coast. And so moving on to the highs for Tuesday afternoon, a little bit warmer, shade warmer, back above the 80-degree mark in the Yukon Flats there, and upper 70s around the Fairbanks area, with 70s now along the Yukon-Kuskokwim River Valley right to the deltas, and lower 60s in the south central area.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to the first line weather graphic, Monday morning, IFR across the Bering Sea, say goodbye to the clear skies of today for the northern Bering Sea, St. Matthew Island right up to the Bering Strait, and down just touching the Yukon Delta coast, and then down to Cape Newenham, western Nunivak Island, western Alaska Peninsula, and some marginal VFR, Adak and Atka, and also over the interior, lower Yukon River Valley, eastern Norton Sound, Buckland, those areas, and then along the Alaska Range, IFR, eastern Alaska Range, in across the eastern Copper River Basin, all of the North Gulf Coast, some of Prince William Sound, southern Cook Inlet to Iliamna Lake, Kamishak Bay, Fognak Island, northeast Kodiak Island, all of the Gulf of Alaska, all of the Panhandle, all the North Gulf Coast. And then for the afternoon, we've got, let's see what takes place as we move along. Improvement, still marginal VFR, eastern Alaska Range into the upper Tanana Valley, south of Eagle though, and down into Prince William Sound, North Gulf Coast, and the southeast coast goes from IFR to marginal VFR. IFR, Eastside Kodiak, Fognak Island, up to just off the south coast of the Kenai Peninsula. And the marginal VFR over the Bering Sea, a little more widespread now from Atka over to Nikolsky and Mac Island, but still everywhere else, IFR, except for St. Lawrence Island becoming marginal VFR up to the Bering Strait. And VFR, Arctic Coast, North Slope, right into the central interior, on down across the Alaska Range, Madanuska, Susitna Valley, Northern Cook Inlet, Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta. And then for the Tuesday morning forecast, we see really nice conditions continuing up there in the north, Arctic Coast, North Slope, Brooks Range, Northwest Coast there, Seward Peninsula, Norton Sound, all VFR. Looks like marginal VFR starting just north of St. Lawrence Island with the IFR there from the south coast of St. Lawrence Island, right along the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta coastline, all of the Bering Sea, all of the Aleutians, most of the Alaska Peninsula, especially Pacific side, right up into Kamishak Bay, Kodiak Island, IFR, Tuesday morning, Prince William Sound, up across the Talkeetnas into the Copper River Basin, IFR, marginal VFR, just south of Eagle, all 40 Mile Country, mid and upper Tanana Valley, and IFR for the Panhandle mostly. And then for the afternoon Tuesday, that backs off to looks like kind of a low cloud and fog situation, bringing the IFR, then burning off in the afternoon to sunshine. Interior mostly VFR, lower conditions to the west and southwest of the marginal variety of the IFR right along the coast, and solid IFR, Bering Sea and Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, almost into southern Cook Inlet, not quite though, marginal VFR to just north of the Forelands though for the inlet. And then for the passes, passes, Anatuvik and Adigan, good VFR tomorrow, either approach, and Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR, turning or becoming VFR, especially in the afternoon. Rainy, same trend, marginal turning to VFR at times, and windy, good VFR. Isabel, marginal VFR, the start, hopefully becoming VFR in the afternoon, and it looks like Mentasta VFR kind of day the entire day tomorrow, north and south entrances and approaches. Tanita, marginal VFR, trending toward VFR, and Portage, marginal VFR. Chilkoot and White starting out with the IFR, becoming marginal in the afternoon, maybe even going VFR. And then for the freezing levels, that upper level low tracking northeastward there into the Gulf, and so you got the cold pool there at 6,000 feet. Good southwest flow, wet weather pattern for the Panhandle. So probably Anatuvik or Chilkoot and White won't go VFR, say marginal at best there with that wind flow pattern. And taking a look at the icing, we've got areas of mixed icing, eastern interior and along the lower Yukon River Valley, Kuskokwim Valley, along the western Alaska Range, Aleutians, rime icing, far western Aleutian areas, and mixed icing into the Panhandle. And then for the jet stream, southwest flow, upper level low trough complex there, Copper River Basin into the Yukon, southwest flow 60 to 95 knots into the Panhandle, westerlies 50 knots across Kodiak Island, the Barrens. And at 9,000 feet, high pressure up over the North Slope Brooks Range, so northeast or east-northeast, 20 to 35 knots into the northeast interior, southwest, 25 to 40 knots into the Panhandle, stronger winds with a low over the Bering Sea, way out west there. And turbulence, light to isolated moderate chop, Alaska Peninsula, shimmy in at 2, and the north or the western Arctic coast, Point Lay down to Cape Lisburn and Point Hope.
Space weather affects technologies. As conditions develop, we put out alerts, warnings, and watches to our customers so they can take action.
The Space Weather Prediction Center has had a long-standing relationship with the power industry, so they've been aware that solar storms, the geomagnetic storm piece of that, can affect the operation of their systems and induce extra currents and loads on those systems that can either trip those systems offline or in the worst of cases, cause damage. That relationship goes back for several decades. In fact, a big incident in 1989 where part of Quebec was tripped offline that affected something like 6 million customers for about 9 hours. I think that really raised the awareness in the power industries.
When we get the alert, we watch the grid and start looking for issues. Are we seeing a decline in voltage? Are we seeing equipment failures? And we readjust the system to try to mitigate those problems, try to keep the lights on and keep it from going out.
Averaging about 500, 550 kilometers per second.
If we didn't have this early warning, we wouldn't see it until our sensor saw it. Getting more information quicker and faster before the storm hits, not during the storm, is a big improvement.
In the long term, I think what we need and what we're moving toward, the U.S. as a whole, is better modeling, fully understanding this phenomenon, understanding how it would impact specific systems.
Rather than actually experiencing a storm, we can simulate storms in our software and see what the impact is. We try to get ahead of it. We always plan that if there's an outage, how can we keep the lights on? What's the best process to prevent it?
In the end, 5-10 years from now, there's going to be a whole mix of operational procedures driven by what we do on prediction and warning. And then there also will probably be some level of hardware controls to ensure the reliability of the grid.
Space weather affects technologies. As conditions develop, we put out alerts, warnings, and watches to our customers so they can take action.
There's different types of impacts on communication systems, and the HF we call the high frequency, which is that band of communications 3 to 30 megahertz. But it's a very important band of radio communication because it's used widespread. It's used, for example, by the airlines.
HF radio is most commonly used for position reporting when you're going across the ocean airspace, which is devoid of radar. And ATC can't see you, so it's up to you to report your position and your altitude and your speed.
HF works great most of the time, except during a big flare. And during a big flare, that HF communication capability could be gone within a minute or two. So as soon as we see something happening in there, or we see a flare, it's one of the first things we do is alert the aviation community, hey, big flare, HF's going to be impacted.
Once we know that there's an event going on, then the aviation industry and the airlines can react to that. They can alter their routes over the poles. They can lower the altitudes that they're flying at, or maybe decide not to fly at all in the interest of the passenger safety.
So that's just one example of how HF is used, but the emergency response community will use it a lot too. It's one of the primary backups.
When you've lost connectivity between certain government agencies, it gives you that long-range coverage to talk from out-of-state to federal governments or from the FEMA locations to the state emergency operations centers.
So if we've got a big hurricane impact in the coastline, whatever big city, we've got the cell towers down and whatnot, we've got emergency communication folks in there. Those folks are very familiar with space weather and how it impacts their systems.
Here in recent years, it was used during Katrina when we had a lot of communications outages down there. It was also used during Hurricane Ike. There was an outage of the telephone circuits with the Texas State Emergency Office, so it was used in both of those situations.
So when we talk about backup, especially for the airlines, typically they'll have SATCOM, so that'll be satellite communication.
The satellite technology that emergency responders use could be GPSs, could be satellite phones, satellite data terminals.
Space weather events can impact SATCOMs. The impact can range from a nuisance to loss of a spacecraft. So we will give them the heads up. If we have space weather events, flares, whatnot, they need to know what's impacting their systems. Situational awareness is key. Time is of essence to these folks. Again, it's life and death.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Today's sea ice analysis showing continuing to open up there north of the Bering Strait. Still a little bit of ice remaining north side of the St. Lawrence Island, and also the shore fast pretty much hanging tough, although starting to show signs of becoming a little more unstable, where it's still clinging to the coastline, but not so much along the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. And coastal water forecasts. Light winds south coast of the Panhandle, southwest 10 to 15 knots, 7-foot seas. North coast, south winds 15, 7-foot seas. Lynn Canal, south wind breeze at 15 knots. And for the central southern inner channels, winds will be variable at 10 knots with seas pretty slight, 2 feet or less. And for Tuesday, Lynn Canal, south winds, especially in the afternoon, 15 knots, seas at about 3 feet. Stevens Passage, variable to south at 10 knots. Clarence Strait, northwest 15 knots. And on the outer coastline, we're looking at southerly winds at 15 for the south coast and south-southeast at 10 knots for the north coast with seas 6 to maybe 7 feet. And Prince William Sound for the day on Monday, variable to east winds, 10 knots with slight seas. Cook Inlet, northern Cook Inlet, southeast 15, seas 4 feet, southwest 15, with 5-foot seas south of the Forelands. Kamishak Bay, southeast winds of 15 knots. North Gulf Coast, Barren Islands, south to southeast breeze at 10 knots with 6-foot seas. Tuesday's forecast, winds come up quite a bit. Small craft advisory is now back in the picture for the North Gulf Coast. Middleton Island zone, east 25 knots, but the western North Gulf Coast, Barren Islands, east winds at 30 knots with 6 to 8-foot seas. And east 25 knots for Kamishak Bay. Cook Inlet, variable winds at 10 knots with 2-foot seas, about sums it up. And for the day on Monday, Bristol Bay, north at 10, north winds 10 knots, Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula, Cape Sarachev to Castle Cape, looking easterly at 15 knots, and then Castle Cape to Sitginak, light northerlies at 10 knots, same thing for Shelikof Strait, and northwest 15, eastern coastline of Kodiak Island. And then gales come in, good increase in the winds on Tuesday, coming up to 35 knots, strongest on the south coast, the east side of Kodiak Island, and gales also Sitginak to Castle Cape. Out of the east, Shelikof Strait, northeast at 30 knots, small craft advisories Bristol Bay, east at 25 knots, and small crafts also for the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula, but just 20 knots on the Bering Sea side with 4-foot seas. And for the Fox Islands, Unalaska Island, easterlies tomorrow, 15 to 20 knots. Umak Island, south to southeast, 10 to 20 knots, 4 to 9-foot seas across those islands. And Adakanatka, south to southwest, 15 knots. Amchitka Island, south at 20, and then Kiska to Shimia, easterlies, 25 knots, seas up to 12 feet. Looking ahead to Tuesday, From Shemya to Kiska, winds will be northerly at 20 knots, and then northeast at 20 for Amchitka Island. Adak and Atka, same forecast as Amchitka, northeast at 20 knots, seas 5 to 7 feet. Unimak Island, east 20 knots. On Alaska Island, east 15 knots. Southwest coast tomorrow, northwest breeze at 10 knots and east of 15 for the Pribilofs, turn northeast 15 for St. Matthew Island. St. Lawrence Island, northerlies 20 knots, 6-foot seas, light variable winds for Norton Sound. And that wind pattern continues on Tuesday, looking at 5 knots, maybe from the north, and 10 knots from the north for St. Lawrence Island. East 10 knots for the Yukon Delta coast, but 20 knots out of the east there, south of Nunivak Island. Same thing for the Pribilofs, east winds 20 knots, northeast 15 for St. Matthew Island. Eastern Boulevard Sea coast, northwest breeze 10 to 15 knots tomorrow, north at 10 for the central coast, and then northeast 20 knots on the west side. Pick up to small craft advisory levels from Cape Beaufort to Cape Thompson. Northeast 25, Cape Thompson to Wales, northerlies 20 knots, 6 to 7 foot seas. And for Tuesday, let's call it north to northeast winds 15 to 20 knots from Wales all the way up to, say, Point Lay. Central east side, pretty light, 5 to 10 knots from the west-northwest. And for tonight, fair skies up there, North Slope, northern Bering Sea, and St. Lawrence Island into the Chukchi Sea. Diminishing thunderstorms slowly, but the shower activity will persist the entire night there in the interior, especially eastern interior, North Gulf Coast. Rain tonight, heaviest this evening. As the front moves in and weakens, they'll become lighter. Weakening front spreads increasing chances of rain, mainly for Unimak Island. But that'll bring showers into Unalaska Island as it washes out tomorrow. And still pretty wet and cool and unsettled southern half of the state and the Panhandle, especially the northern southeast coast. On Tuesday, better conditions.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.